They do. I was involved in a 2-year research project with Heliospectra. So Heliospectra is probably one of the most acclaimed LED companies in the world. They light more greenhouses for commercial herb production, meaning like basil, thyme, tarragon, than any other company. And so for 2 years, I did all their research in North America before they released the product. And there is a lot of limitation on fixture number and penetration depth. These particular fixtures were about $8,000 a piece, but I could control all temperatures of Kelvin within the range, so I could drive production of terpenoids specifically, or specific cannabinoids. I had the ability to use a curve type timing chart, because really plants don't absorb light in a linear fashion. They basically turn on, they reach maximum photosynthetic potential, and then they have like a bell-shaped curve, and they decline, and then they come back up, and then they decline again. And so what we were able to do was utilize these digital controls on an iPad, and I could match the consumption curve and production curve, so that what it did was it gave us the most efficient usage of lighting. The whole thing with the LED is it's this efficiency component. And I use a lot of different lighting technologies, but ultimately for the operator, a single DE Gavita, 10 foot off the ground, covers 100 square foot of supplemental in a greenhouse, and it's pretty bulletproof. And you got about a 2-year use on the bulb, you have a 1-year use on the reflector. And so in terms of like for a commercial cultivator, if you're at commercial level, you never want to chase technology. You want technology to develop, and then you want to see it adapted at another level, and then you trickle it down. And so I know people that use LEDs heavily and they have good production, but ultimately the cost of the initial investment offsets the power savings over, it takes a couple of years to even get it back. So I don't think we're there in that respect.
So we're still a couple of years away. Stinkbud, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and that has to do, like here in the Northwest, power to run a 1,000-watt light here in Washington costs us like about $27 a month down in southern Washington. So it's pretty cheap to run a 1,000-watt HPS light here in the Northwest. Now down in California, it cost me about $90 a month to run it. So it's a little bit different situation down there than it is up here. But up here, it's hard to justify spending that much extra money on an LED fixture when you really are just not going to see the benefits. Also, you really have to run a shallower canopy, use more of a screen of green, do a lot of training, just because it just doesn't have the penetration that the HPS lights do. So I'm still a big proponent of a combination of HPS and MH ratios, just because I'm seeing denser, harder, bigger buds, and that's what people want. So
I think thank you very much. The next question that I've got to you guys is about the maximum potency that we might see in plants. Until a few years ago, having provided cannabis to patients for the last 20 years, I would have said that this plant maxes out realistically at 25% THC. Over the last year at Tilray, we've had 2 products that we've sold that have been over 30% THC, OG Shark and some Rockstar. I never would have trusted those tests in the past. I am a believer now. So what do you guys think? Is this new breeding? Is it new growing techniques? And what's the maximum plant THC that we're going to see? Is 30 now the window? Is it going to be shattered? Or are we going to see 30, 35, 30, 40% THC down the road?
Boy, I don't know on that one. That's a real good question. I'm like you. I'm really amazed. I got one the other day that came out of, what was that? Roseburg, Oregon. Somebody gave it to me. It was 27%. And it's just strong as hell. It's pretty amazing that growing techniques and continual breeding for the same thing, high THC content, appears to work. If it can go any higher, it's out of my area. It's beyond me. I wish Samantha Miller were here. She wrote a chapter in this book as well. She's got pure analytics, and she could give you specifically what the threshold was.
Right on.
I've been trying to have this conversation with people a lot to see if I can meet somebody qualified to actually give you just from a botanical standpoint, what the actual possible threshold could be. I haven't met that person yet, but I will say this, that it does seem logical that as we evolve, the plant continues to evolve with us, and there's no reason to suggest that it's not going to continue to get stronger. What I will suggest is that these numbers of 20s and 30%, that maybe they're all just generated from a baseline, and maybe the baseline is somewhat askew, because there is no sign that in the next few years or by the end of any of our lifetimes that cannabis flowers are going to stop getting stronger.
I'd love to hear what Kevin has to say.
Well, you know, I know Samantha Miller too. We talk about this. What you have is you have basically a basket that this cannabis plant is, and it contains all the cannabinoids. And what we see is we see a little into the 30s in terms of THC, and we see into the 30s on CBD, but not in terms of total CBD, but combined. So I have varieties that come in around 30% total cannabinoids, but CBD dom. So maybe 21% CBD, 10% THC, and then mixed cannabinoids. So that gives us into the 30s. Then we go into the same thing with the high THCs. We have some 28.8s, 28.9s, 29.2s, and with the other cannabinoids, they're in the 30s. And it seems like we're kind of at this level where we've been working to try to get the concentrations higher, but I believe there's only so much basket that can be filled with cannabinoids, period. And we're starting to see the CBD end lift up on it, because the CBD 5 years ago was considered non-existent until Spanibus. Then we had the Cannatonic comes out at 5. Ringo put the Sour Tsunami and all these varieties he worked at about 5. You flash forward 7 years and we're looking at 22. But it's still topping out at 30s plus combined. So maybe in the 30s that is what the cannabis plant can carry, unless we do some kind of genetic modification. But it seems to distribute pretty evenly if you look at enough samples. That's the whole thing, is you have to look at thousands of samples to say what is the range, and it kind of balances out.
Yeah. Thanks. That's a good point.
I'm surprised. I'd be surprised if it goes much higher than it is now. It just seems like you say, Kevin, it's a natural balance, and it's like gravity. It's always going to be the same. You can't go beyond that.
And yet 5 years ago we would have said 25. I would have said 25 is the max. Yeah. So who knows, right? Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that, Stinkbud?
Yeah, you know, the one thing that surprises me is that we're actually like putting a number on THC. Like somehow we can measure the high easily. And what I found is the different genetics of different strains is the high is so different. There's strains that are really, really high in THC, and you take one hit and you get really high, but you don't really get a lot higher. You keep smoking it lasts a long time, but it's not like it just locks you to the couch. It really just makes your face melt. And there's other strains though that are high THC, like that we don't really see commercially, because commercial growers are just not viable to grow a pure sativa. It takes 12 to 14 weeks to flower, so you really don't see those varieties. Well, there's these varieties that don't have a lot of THC number-wise, but you can just keep smoking it, and you get higher and higher. There's no ceiling. And so it's kind of misleading, and to try to like put a number on something like a high when there's plants out there that get you way, way, way higher that are actually a lower THC. You just have to take 3 hits instead of 1, which is kind of good if it tastes good. So
guys, I'm going to ask you guys one more question. We're going to turn it over to the audience so they can pick your brains a little bit. I wanted to find out over the last year or so what you guys have seen that has really blown your mind in terms of technology, either for pest control, for trimming. I've seen amazing improvements in terms of trim technology, for lights, fertilizers, or for cannabis production itself. What have you seen that's really kind of made you go, oh my God, this is really the next big thing?
Well, the thing that I like, in fact, I don't have one on me right now, but I usually carry one in the car or in my computer bag. It's a Uvc Flashlight. And those things work great. They're great for, you shine them anywhere in the dark and you can see any kind of human fluids. They're great for motels and stuff when you stay there. The cops use them as well, so you can check around. So that's good. But the thing is with them, if you shine those around on your plants, you can't let that UVC shine. Well, the LED UVC lamps they're not so bright, but you can actually see the bug trails, bug residues or insect residues, and also, more importantly, you can see powdery mildew. You can see powdery mildew before it enters your plant, because it stays on the outside of the leaf. Okay, that's the flashlight, and they work great. You should have one. And then all the slug trails. They look like iridescent slug trails everywhere. So that's pretty gross when it's running all over your plants. And then the other things they've got over in Europe, they've got now these little handheld UVC lights that are like this. There's some of them in my book, a couple different pictures. You run those over your plants. It doesn't have to be over the plant very long, just a second or two. And you do that every couple of days. It'll kill everything on the surface of the plant, just like it would the surface of your skin. It would kill anything on the surface of your skin. But if you leave it too long, it will burn. The way it works is a UV light it's got a lot of activity to it. It bounces around a lot. It excites the surface and pretty much just bombards anything that's on the surface of the leaf.
And that's UVC, not UVB, right?
UVB is not as strong. Same end of the spectrum, but UVC. Yeah, that's great.
That's terrific advice. What have you seen that's blowing your mind these days, Stinkbud, as an innovator in this industry?
Well, it's not so much as blowing my mind as that it's just becoming accepted, and that's the use of beneficials in growing methods. For years, people, I've always known the advantages of beneficial bacteria and how it helps the growth and uptake of nutrients. We're starting to see it being used in hydroponic systems now, which before, years ago, it was kind of like a little bit scary to run a live reservoir if you ever grown hydroponics. Now it's kind of accepted, and we can use good bacteria to fight the bad bacteria. So I think people are just becoming more aware also of using, instead of using pesticides and stuff, using Predator, for example. I never use, I always use Predators. You can buy them here in Southern Oregon. There's a place that sells them. So like if you get mites, that sort of thing, instead of using pesticides, use Predator mites, or there's a lot of other options available without having to use harmful chemicals. So.
It's amazing with the cannabis industry. You have to look backwards sometime, like at natural production practices, to move forward, and that's been an amazing trend.
Nature's Control. Nature's Control is the company's name in Southern Oregon. Great company, Nature's Control.
Excellent, thanks a lot. Kyle, what are you seeing these days?
Yeah, I just, I have to reiterate, I was going to mention, the Living Root Soil Food Web and people embracing, living soils and beneficial bacterias. And learning about that, it really helps. Everybody should be growing a little bit of vegetables too. I encourage people to grow some of their own food or have a little herb garden or something, and and also just that we're standing here in a acceptable place to smoke, and everybody keep being involved though, because a lot of people are still going to jail every day, and so I'm going to pass that on before I turn it into something that wasn't.
Thanks, Kyle. That's great. But that's a good point, that sometimes innovation is policy innovation as well.
I think the thing that you're seeing a lot is probiotic growing, which is basically anaerobic driven. Anaerobic different than aerobic, where streptomyces is without oxygen. And what it does is it allows cultivators to put together a biological package that doesn't require them to use blown compost, which I do love a lot, and it is phenomenal. It's just that it's a little simpler to do a ProBio method. And what we're having such big issues with in California is water. And so the water problem is huge. And when you're running ProBio, what you're doing is you're really filling this bag with a charge of nutrients and liquid that live within the bacteria. And as these bacteria die, they release this to the plants. And so instead of just having the electrical charge between water and media, you're actually having a living body in your media that holds the liquid that then releases it upon death. And what we see is, like double the difference in water times. And so when we try to get people into doing some of these healthier methods, a lot of it has to be profit driven, because ultimately it was business that drove so much of it. But the majority of people who farm cannabis are fundamentally good people. And when they can understand that they can benefit financially, as they should, but they can also do a better process, it's better. Because ProBio, what you have is you have bioremediation upon runoff. So the issue that we have now is, what do we do with the runoff from our gardens? What is this runoff? And if you're using ProBio, what you're doing is you're actually doing bioremediation, you're re-inoculating the earths, and so you ought to get a grant for being such a good guy.
I was going to say, a resounding theme that I'm hearing today, and I've emceed this panel for about 10 years, is environmental consciousness going on about growing. I think we all know the benefits of plants. You've mentioned growing vegetables, and it's amazing to see the kind of consciousness going on about how we're doing this now. And part of it is driven because in California you're running out of water and the cost of power is so high, but whatever drives it, it's great if it's driving innovation in the industry. We've got these great cultivators here, guys. I'd love to take some questions if you have any questions for Anyone on the panel? You can tell us your name too.
My name is Tyler Cook. I'm a grower at Cook Family Farms here in Washington. Really small time operation. But I just had a question. There's this new craze, well, it's not really new now, but the feminized seed. What's the difference between feminized and hermaphrodited seed? Because I know hermaphrodited seed is genetically unstable. So wouldn't feminized seed also be genetically unstable?
It is. Fem seed comes from the cucumber industry.
Beautiful baby you've got here.
So when people wanted to do cucumbers, they didn't want to have so many starts. So they feminized it. But the problem is seeds in cucumbers aren't an issue. But in cannabis it is, and what you see is these things are stress-induced pollinations, and what you find is that, and feminization and selfing are tools we use to refine a breed, to work things, but when we're talking about cannabis crop for a market that does not accept seed, it is imperative that this variety does not produce seed. And the problem that we see with these fem strains is that under a microscope, you see microscopic seed. And so I have a fem or two that's just bulletproof. But I know it's bulletproof because we stressed it in about 100 different rooms to find out. But on other stuff, it's a risk because cucumber technology isn't cannabis technology. And so their issues, there are a couple seeds per cuc extra. Did it affect them at all? No. But it destroyed your market value.
Kevin, you've been a source of great information today. Someone at an earlier panel, I don't know if you were sitting here, mentioned smoking seeded cannabis as kind of a new experience and something that he thought we kind of lost through Sensimilla. Do you guys have anything to say about that? Have you, do you know about different chemical profiles of seeded cannabis versus unseeded?
No, we're not running we could run the profiles. Now that we have labs to access this, for so many years, everything we did with cannabis was just our own experiences. We all touched it so intimately that we built up our own database. And so for the last, for me now, I've had probably 10 years of lab time. So for, 10 years ago, I had access to some commercial grape labs, and then after that, we've had access to other labs to start doing testing. But so much of the cannabis that we work with in terms of how it was done prior, when we used to receive cannabis from the field, you didn't receive a strain, you received a crop. And so just like with hash, you got whole crop, not whole plant. I mean, even more profound. So when I receive genetics from other countries and I do sifts to find it, I see a variety that's so unbelievable that there has to be benefits in this that we just don't really fully understand. And I'm old too. I'm from the generation of smoking seeded cannabis. And I know that I like the effects because it was coming primarily from places that were on that 0 to 20 on the equator. So it was designed for more cerebral tone, and the terpenes matched up. I would love to have done some terpene analysis on the old Colombians. But yeah, there has to be something to this because we know as humans that we've experienced it. It's just what we'd have to do now is let's seed some cannabis and let's test it at the lab.
Yeah, I agree, and that there's not a lot of motivation to do that these days.
One of the things that concerns me about the feminized seeds, I live in Spain for many years. Now, what I find is, what's happening there, what's happened in the last 5 to 6 years, 7, maybe even 10 years, all of the seed companies, everybody is selling feminized seeds only. And what that does is that makes you go back to seed every year. So it's like you said, everybody, it's about money. So they want to make more money and you have to go back to seed every year. That's not such a great deal because we're dependent on fewer and fewer people, and making your own varieties is still quite important.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've got a question over here.
Lighting. What are your recommendations on the new lighting system? What kind of system would you most highly recommend? What's most cost effective, leaves the least carbon footprint? There's been a lot of new lighting coming out in the past few years. What are your opinions?
As far as cost effective, I'm not sure on that. Somebody could give maybe a better answer on that. But the new lights that I like quite well are there's a Gavita open end. It's got 2 ends on it. The electricity flows all the way through. And that's an excellent lamp. It appears to be quite a bit brighter, up to 10% brighter. It's got an excellent reflective hood on it that reflects the most light possible. That and the other reflective hood is the adjuster wing, works quite well. And then the other lamp that, and I've done some videos on this with Flowery Field over in Austria, are the what do they call it? The induction, not the induction lights, the LEP. light-emitting plasma lamps. What they do, and back on the UV theme again, what they do is they emit UVB, A, B, and C onto the plants, and that's the same as the natural sunlight, and that makes the plant, it appears to make them grow a bit faster, but it toughens them up. It makes the cutis, the outer layer of the leaf, much tougher, and they have much less trouble with insect and diseases as well.
Hey, I've got. Do you want to add something to that, Stinkbud? I got one more.
I still prefer HO fluorescence for my veg. I've yet to find anything more efficient. It keeps the internode leak down so the plants don't stretch. And it's very cost effective, very efficient for what you get. For flower, I think Jorge covered the flowering side of things very well.
I agree with Jorge on the only new lighting technology that I've seen that I like is the double-endeds. They do throw the light a little bit better, so you get a really good penetration. And I happen to like the Solistech double-endeds. They're the only company that manufactures multiple spectrum double-ended bulbs. And they have about 4 different spectrums, I believe. They have the HPS, and then they have the metal halide in 2, 6, and 10K. And I really like blending lights, so that's why I go with the Solistechs.
Their Solistechs are nice bulbs. It's all aquarium technology. I like plasma lights to go along with the HPS. Remember, we do mostly supplemental outside greening, but I run a lot of indoor systems too. I like induction lighting for vegetative. It's expensive, but there's not a big heat signature, so depending on your application, if you're looking at Colorado, you're looking at indoors that maybe run 3,000 or 4,000 of these lights in five stack arrays. And you can get a consistent production from it because the heat production is so low. So I use them because I get a good UV production off it. And what it does is it lets me harden up plants before I put them in a greenhouse or before I sell them to people for outside. So when the question about lighting, the first thing is what are you using it for? Because that's best. There is no thing best. That's what's the best person? Depends what you need. So first you got to identify your need, and then you can start to say what's the simplest best method. And these guys are talking about all these DN lights. It just means it doesn't screw in with the mobile socket. It just snaps into a fixture. It's a new form of holding a light, but you get a much better distribution. The Gavitas are excellent fixtures. The PLs are good fixtures. There's a variety of them. And then you have the ability, like Kyle was saying, to change out the Kelvin, the temperature of the bulb, to reflect a more bluer, tighter stacked for veg, hotter, more open structure for flower. And you can flip these bulbs in and out, and so that you can really tailor what you're doing. And if you're doing indoor, it matters. Indoor is extremely, extremely expensive nowadays compared to what it used to be, and outdoors really come up in value. So in order to compare as an indoor cultivator, you almost need to be like Kyle, where you're really, well, it's true, that's what you're known for. You're really trying to squeeze the envelope and drop a goodie out this thing, because otherwise you're not going to make the money you're supposed to. It's a little tighter market than it used to be.
All right, we've got one more question.
My name's Dustin Salem. I work for a 21,000 square foot commercial grow operation in Eastern Washington. What's your recommendation for the grow method? How we can best utilize the space we got?
Are you indoor or outdoor?
Well, it's a greenhouse, so it's both.
So you're 21,000. Well,
yes.
What you need to do then is for you guys is supplemental lighting. So you can run huts with no assistance through the majority of your season, but early in the year, you got snow? You guys got snow load?
No, we're in Yakima.
Okay, so you don't have a snow load then, so you can technically run year round with your hoops. And what you want to do is, we're running greenhouses with a single 1,000 on 100 square foot coverage. So I'm getting killer coverage, and then depending on what we're trying to do, vegetate or extend a season. If you have the ability to even get lumen sensors during the daytime in the winter when the coverage is low, they'll kick on. And so this way you're using the power as little as possible, you're using the sun as much as possible, and then just make sure that you have, in greenhouse, the real problem is the humidity spikes. And when the humidity spikes in the greenie, what you end up getting is not just rot, but you get reduced trichs. Trichs are anti-desiccants. If you want to see a plant produce its genetic potential, you need to give it the environment it needs, which is this dry one. And so the problem with greenhouses versus straight outdoor is a straight outdoor will always have more resin comparatively than a greenhouse. You can always tell greenhouse cannabis. And so that's the issue that you guys have to work on, is really your ventilation component. You guys get good weather in Eastern Washington. Yeah, so you're not going to get the snow where you're at. You're going to get plenty of, I think it was like 105 the other day there.
Yeah, it was 116 for 2 weeks straight.
Yeah, so you got all you need. You just have to work on ventilation issues and then extending your season with lighting. And in that case, these DE lights are by far the cheapest way to go. And if you can use it the most efficiently, I mean, if it ultimately how much I use in fossil fuel, but if it took me 20,000 to produce this and it took me 3,000 to produce that, there has to be some form of savings there too in terms of fossil.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. I want a big hand for this amazing panel first. I'm going to ask the whole panel to please go to the knowledge hut if you guys fit for 5 minutes so people can ask you a few more questions. How amazing, once again, Jorge Cervantes, Stinkbud, Kyle Kushman, Kevin Laundrie. Thank you so much, guys. No, Jodrey, of course, Jodrey. Kevin, you were these guys have had a pleasure hosting over the past years.